When we hear about the stock market crash of 1929, it's easy to picture Wall Street bankers and all that ticker tape. But this was something else. This was a story that unfolded in every kitchen, every factory, and in every single family across America. It fundamentally changed daily life in ways that are, honestly, almost impossible to imagine today. And at its heart, it's a story of survival.
For millions of people, this was the called hard truth. You know that promise? The one that says, if you just work hard, you'll build a better life for yourself and your kids? Well, that promise, it just shattered, seemingly overnight. 25%. Now, just let that number sink in. This isn't just some dry statistic. At its worst, 1 out of every 4 working Americans had no job, no paycheck, absolutely no idea where their family's next meal was going to come from. The scale of it, it's just staggering.
So, to really get the sheer shock of what happened, we kind of have to rewind the clock. We need to look at what life was like before everything fell apart. Because you see, there was this sense of predictability, a real rhythm to life that felt, well, it felt safe. And this was the foundation of that feeling of safety. It was a simple formula, really. You went to your factory job, you got your weekly paycheck. Or maybe your family had a little business that took care of everyone. But underneath it all was this powerful, almost unspoken belief. If you worked hard, you were okay. Your future was pretty much guaranteed. And then, just like that, the entire world flipped upside down. That promise of a stable job, it turned into a factory with a padlock on the gate. The life savings you worked so hard for, gone because the bank failed. And that guaranteed future, well, it just completely collapsed.
So you've got to be asking, how did all this happen so fast? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was this terrifying domino effect. One failure just slammed right into the next and the next, creating this awful cascade that dragged the entire country down with it.
Okay, so let's walk through it. The crash in 29 was the spark. By 1930, factories started shutting down. I mean, who could afford to buy anything? Then, a year later, the banks started to fail. They'd lost a ton of money in the market, and people's life savings just vanished. All of this leads us right up to 1933, when unemployment hit that devastating peak. And here's the part that is absolutely crucial to understand. When a family lost everything, their job, their savings, there was nothing to catch them. No unemployment benefits, no social security, nothing. You were completely and totally on your own. So now, let's zoom in. Let's move from the huge national economic disaster to the really personal one. What did it actually look and feel like to survive day in and day out when your whole world had just disappeared? It was a fight, a constant daily fight. Food. It became the single focus of every single day. You'd see people standing in breadlines for hours just for a bowl of soup and some bread. In homes, families were skipping meals all the time. Parents would go hungry just so their kids could have something to eat. And you better believe not a single scrap of food ever went to waste. So, when you lost your home, where did you go? Well, people built these makeshift communities, these little shanty towns, out of whatever they could find, scrap wood, tin, cardboard, and they called them Hoovervilles. It was a direct, really bitter shot at the president, who so many people blamed for their suffering. This crisis also stole something you can never get back: a childhood. Kids just had to grow up way too fast. So many of them dropped out of school to find any odd job they could, just to bring in a few pennies for the family. Suddenly, an education and all the innocence that comes with being a kid became a luxury that almost no one could afford. But, the damage wasn't just about money or food. The Depression left these deep, hidden scars on people's minds and hearts. And yet, at the same time, it revealed this unbelievable strength, this incredible resilience in the face of hardship you and I can barely imagine. And in this new world, women became, for all intents and purposes, survival experts. We're not just talking about chores here. These were critical, life-saving skills. Figuring out how to stretch one tiny meal to feed a whole family, mending clothes until they were literally threadbare, taking in laundry or borders for a few extra cents. This was the glue that held families together. But let's talk about the things you couldn't see. The unseen burdens. There was this crushing shame that came with not being able to provide for your family, a constant gnawing fear about what tomorrow would bring. For people who had always worked hard, there was this profound loss of pride. But look closely at that chart. There's another slice in there: hope. It was small and it was battered, but it was never, ever completely gone. When you get right down to it, the American people were tested in a way they had never been before. They lost everything you can measure: their jobs, their homes, their security. But the one thing they didn't lose was their dignity and their absolute will to just keep going. And that kind of leaves us with a pretty powerful question, doesn't it? The story of the Great Depression, it's not just about economics. It's about what happens to the human spirit when everything else is stripped away. It really makes you wonder, when times get tough, what do we discover about ourselves, about our own resilience, and about each other?